I'm Beverly Copeland. This is my TV show. I'm going to be doing it regularly, and so this is the new series. This is the Beverly Copeland Report. So I'm just going to start with one of my greatest hits on. And am I good? Just listen to what I had to say. So yeah, I wanted to say I wanted to say that we are living through we are entering a very, very tragic, really, historic, tragic um, era in human history. Not because of the looming inevitable economic collapse, which because of the interconnection of the global economy means that it's going to be the worst depression in the annals of human history. Not only that, with all the negative scapegoating, etc., etc. And like the last time, as I have been saying for years, when I had a TV show years ago, I said it's analogous to what happened with the stock market crash and the Great Depression in 1929. In my view, as someone who dropped out of a PhD program in economics, that was orchestrated. There was a new burst of technologies, electronics, gadgets, gizmos, cars, radios, all kinds of stuff, refrigerators, stoves, gas, light bulbs, so many. So, what it appeared to be, as a student of economic history, there was a new burst of technologies, right? So, in order to get seed money to finance these new technologies as they emerged, people were encouraged to participate in the stock market, in the equity markets, in the stock markets, in the financial markets, right? So that a pool of capital would be accessible for the research and development and marketing of these new products that were the result of these new innovation, this new burst of technology via electronics primarily, right? Automotives, things like that, and automotive stuff like that. So we had that, yes. And then, as these new technologies, technologies have a product life cycle, like humans, right? We're born, we're infants, we reach maturity, and then we decline old age. Products, technologies, this is it's known in marketing as the product life cycle for products and technology. So, when it was new, when these things were new, to encourage the research and development of the potential for these new technologies, if you will, little people were encouraged to participate in the stock market, and they flooded the stock market with money that provided the seed money for startups, etc., etc. So there were like so many, there may be 100 automobile companies in America at one time when these new technologies started. Then, as these technologies began to mature, there was a shakeout. There was a shakeout, right? It's called a Great Depression stock market crash. And what happened was the powers that be were able to, how can I say, they were able to consolidate, I'll use that euphemism, consolidate their power and wealth. So it went from maybe 100 automobile companies to, after the Great Depression in America, maybe, maybe five. Now, are there three or are there two? Depends. So we're the same thing now. This is analogous to the last part of the 20th century and our century now, the 21st, where it's not electronics and automotives. What the new technologies are related to computing, IT, information technologies, right? All this burst of IT technologies. Analogously, there were like In order to get encouraged, people were encouraged to get involved, to speculate in the stock market, the equity markets, etc., to provide a pool of capital or money to finance the research and development of the potentially new innovations, IT innovations. So now, again, everything has products and technologies have a product life cycle. So that's when the infancy, when they saw the burst of this new innovative engineering and science, they wanted to maximize the profit and the potential. Tons of money, people were encouraged to pour, like the last time, money into the market. And so we have all these hedge funds, hedge fund managers, startups, you name it. And it doesn't take, well, to be honest. And so now that these technologies are maturing, they're not really mature, but they're maturing. There's going to be another shakeout, and the powers that be are going to consolidate their wealth and power like they did the last time. And who was it, Yogi Berra, who said deja vu all over again? Well, deja vu all over again because the same cast of characters. It's almost like a rerun of a horror movie. It really is a rerun of a horror movie. Again, the people who manage Wall Street, not by any stretch the people who own it, have hijacked the management from the good old boys and the good old, let me be honest, good old boys and good old girls in America. People like the John Reeds, the Walter Wristons, people, African Americans I know, like a business professor of mine named Nat Sutton, and like Gail Robinson, who's someone I went to Bronx High School of Science with, and then to Columbia University Barnard College. These people were the best and the brightest on Wall Street. Nat Sutton was one of the state of North Carolina's many, many gifts to the Harvard Business School, and Gail Robinson certainly was one of New York's many, many gifts to Columbia University's Business School. And John Riston and John Reed and Walter Riston at Citicorp. They were all Citigroupers, and the Citigroupers were considered the best and the brightest on the street being Wall Street. So then, the next thing we knew, it was like a Mission Impossible movie. These are the people who managed it. They were the senior managers. Gail Robinson was so damn good that it used to irritate people because everybody said she's better than the damn white boys who's been seeped in Wall Street for generations. They'd have meetings. They'd go on trips to do it. And she'd come in the meeting already. They're tired from jet lag. She'd have her PowerPoint presentation, analyze everything, and so she was just so damn good. Gail was a managing director in an investment banking group at Citicorp. She was not only a pioneering woman of color, a pioneering person of color, she was a pioneering woman on Wall Street. She was a managing director in corporate finance at that, on Wall Street at Citicorp, when she had to be the first. She had to be the first. Let me contextualize that. When I got out of graduate school,
this is a blast from the past, one of my past
tapes. In 1980,
so
that sounds like a long time ago to a lot of people, but actually it's not that long for someone like me. I'm 63 years old. So when I got out of graduate school in 1980, they had, guess what, to show you how extraordinary Gail Robinson is, there had never in the history of Wall Street been one woman, not even one blue-blooded Anglo-Saxon, WASP, patrician, family owns Wall Street woman, white woman, who had ever in the history of the world worked in corporate finance on Wall Street. You understand? It was unthinkable, unheard of. Again, I'm going to repeat that. In 1980, when I completed my MBA, in the history of the world, there had never been any woman, not even a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant blue-blooded wasp, whose family owned Wall Street, and had an MBA with distinction from Harvard University. There had never been any woman in the history of the world who ever worked in corporate finance on Wall Street as late as 1980. Now, Gail Robinson, like me and Nat Sutton, is African American. Her roots are deep in the southern part of the United States of America, like mine and Nat Sutton, 100%. So I just wanted to say that to contextualize what an extraordinary genius, financial genius Gail Robinson is.
Nat Sutton, too.
She was a managing director in an investment banking corporate finance group at Citicorp. There was no affirmative action involved. Gail Robinson was just such an extraordinary genius. Nat Sutton was a genius too. So was John Reed. So was Walter Wriston. John Reed, who was Walter Wriston, obviously, and John Reed were white. But John Reed's first degree, one of his degrees is from MIT. I think his engineering or something. He has a degree from MIT, and he was the head of Citigroup at the time. Now, there was a major coup at Citigroup. I'm just going to keep it real. Sandy Weil was head of Travelers, and they begged Citigroup to bail them out because they got in financial difficulty. John Reed, these were good old boys and good old girls. John Reed, Walter Wriston, Gail Robinson, Nat Sutton. These were people, ethical bankers, play by the rules. So then they felt sorry for Travelers. They brought Sandy Weil in. Now Sandy Weil had everything he had done had been like a disaster of sorts. So they felt sorry for Sandy Weil. Now Sandy Weil, I'm just going to keep it real, is Jewish, and his team was largely Jewish. So they felt sorry for them. Said we need help. They brought him in, right? And then what they did to tutor them and help them because they needed help. Essentially, it wasn't a merger. I believe it was an acquisition of Travelers by Citigroup. So they acquired Travelers, they bring them in, and they feel they're begging, they need help, so they tutor them.
A big mistake.
Right? So they had a co-this and a co-that for every important
big
group
mistake.
at Citigroup. They had a Travelers person and a Citigrouper, right? The Citigroupers were, for the most part, Anglo-Saxons, with a few handful of exceptions, like my friends, Gail Robinson, and like my former professor, Nat Sutton, business professor. And the Wild team, let me be frank, were largely Jewish. Then it was like, I swear to God, it was like a Mission Impossible movie. Because the next thing you knew, all of the best and brightest, like the Nat Suttons, the Gail Robinsons, the John Reeds, were out. And the people that they had been tutoring as the co-managers were in running Citigroup, right? It was this strained all credulity. So I had to have lunch with my friends to find out how, because nobody understood. It was like, how did that happen? It was like a Mission Impossible movie. So I had lunch with Nat Sutton. I vividly recall. By the Citicorp building, right across the street, right by the Citicorp building. And I was like, it sounded like unbelievable, like a Mission Impossible movie. And I just packed that in the back of my head. I'm not saying anything now, but let me put it contextualized that around the same time the Jews do not control, they do not own Wall Street. Please, let's get that straight. They don't own it. They just manage the Anglo-Saxons' money. They just manage their money, right? So there was a coup in terms of the management of the white men of the Anglo-Saxons' money. The good old boys, the people who were ethical, honest, the best of the brightest, the best geniuses in banking there were at the time. Now, they were ousted in a coup by the gang that can't shoot straight. Wild and his crew. I'm just being honest. They were out. No one. I said, how could that? So I had to go and find out. So I was talking, and it sounded like a Mission Impossible
It
movie.
really did.
Because it strained all credulity that the people they were tutoring, they felt sorry for and brought them in to help, and they were all saying John Reed was just too soft. They were sharks and shysters, and they just bamboozled him, and he was just a pushover. But John Reed was not so, you don't become head of a city corp if you were just a pushover. I'm not saying anything, but at around that time, I'm just going to just say it. I'm not connecting any dots. I'm just putting it out there. For the first time in the history of the United States, we had a Jewish head of the United States intelligence. We had a Jewish head of the CIA, George Tenet, who says he's Greek, but actually, if you look at his genealogy, he's a French Albanian Jewish extraction.
Can't make it up.
So George Tenet was head of the CIA, an appointee by, you guessed it, Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton. Tenet comes in, Weil comes in, the good old boys and good old girls no longer manage Wall Street. It's essentially people like Weil, right? But I don't want to scapegoat. Let me just say this. They don't own Wall Street. As a matter of fact, Weil became the king of the Wall Street managers, right? But let me say this. Weil was eventually forced out too. And let me just give me the scuttlebutt on why Weil was. He was like the big baba, the head rabbi of Wall Street. He was forced out, and this is what insiders know, and I know because So they told me because Sandy Weil started acting like he owned Wall Street, and the people who owned Wall Street, those white Anglo-Saxons, got rid of him. Fired him, and he never got another job on Wall Street. From the head of Citicorp, but he had made so much money, And for example, the Weill Cornell, one of the top hospitals in Manhattan. That's Sandy Weil. But that's how certain people are. They're ostentatious. But the people who own Wall Street are, you know how Anglos are, quiet, understated, reserved. You can see that when you go to Ireland or the UK. The food, the architecture, those people are very, very, they're not flashy and showy. They're very, very understated and genteel. They're not pushy and flashy. So so the next thing he was out, and I just all these things. But let me say this: I can honestly say I cannot conceive that the economy would have been pushed. The global economy would have been pushed to, and it's looming and inevitable.
That's true.
The greatest depression in the annals of human history.
That's true.
If people like Gail Robinson, Nat Sutton, Walter Wriston, John Reed had not been forced out of the management of Wall Street, however it happened. There is no way that I can conceive of that we would have had the sovereign debt crisis, the credit card fiasco, the real estate fiasco, none of this. It's impossible. And I'm just being honest,
That's
right?
true. It would have never happened.
So so this is again getting back to what happened in the last depression. The same people. Oh, it's deja vu, as Yogi Berra said, deja vu all over again. And what is particularly tragic is that the Jews once again are going to be the number one scapegoats. You better be number one, and they know it because I've had discussions with them about they are going to be the number one scapegoats for all of this. Deja vu all over again. Deja vu all over again. Yes, they are. And so the idea that, that anyone would expect me to have anything to do with the people, the Jews responsible for the governance of America, people in the leadership, the Jewish leadership in the federal government, like the Senate, you know I'm talking about, or at the Federal Reserve, you know I'm talking about, or on Wall Street, the management, you know what I'm. First of all, I'm disabled and I can't work. But to me, that it would be very, very sick.
You're sick.
Given that the Jews know, because I've had discussions with many of them, very high place, Ivy League professors, yada, yada, yada. They know that all of this is headed to economic collapse, the worst in human history, and the scapegoating, like the last time, the number one scapegoat, the Jews.
It's always a trap.
As a
You
matter of
can't
fact,
be a
I
Nazi and a
vividly
Jew.
recall
It's always
when
a
I
trap.
was on the board of the Barnard College Club at Columbia University, because I'm an alum of that school, the Women's College at Columbia University. At the time, I had been active in alumni affairs. I was on the board of the Barnard College Club. I had given this speech at the annual dinner at the Barnard College Club, America at a Crossroads. I had been an advisor to the dean of the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University, which, by the way, is one of its strongest schools. I had been the first African American alumni to be an advisor to a dean or the head of that school, or even before it was a school, it was a division of Columbia University. More heads of state, more senior government officials, more heads of financial international organizations like heads and leaders, senior managers, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the UN, you name it. More of them, or more senior diplomats, have been graduates of Columbia University School of International Public Affairs than any other such school in the world. So that's where my second degree is from. My first graduate degree is from there. So in that capacity, it really was an honor, by the way, to serve Dean Lisa Anderson. Absolutely. Because she was just an extraordinary, extraordinary person. Extraordinary.
A rarity among the human species.
It really, I remember. I remember at that
Lisa
time.
Anderson.
It was around the time after Kubrick's movie AI, and so the Barnard College Club was, we would do things like go to museums, theater, plays. It's a group of intellectuals like me, older alums, and so we would have discussions about art and culture, politics, everything. So I vividly recall a discussion about Stanley Kubrick's movie, or AI, artificial intelligence. Now, that movie, I don't think Kubrick finished that movie because it became wishy-washy. He was profound and extraordinary. And as we discussed at the Barnard College Club, Kubrick happens to be like me, a Bronx from the Bronx, and that he's from the Bronx, New York. There are a lot of Sonia Sotomayor, Colin Powell. There's so many extraordinary people from the Bronx, New York. Definitely. Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren. Honestly, I think they need to do a sociological study on the Bronx because it's extraordinary how many such extraordinary talent came out of the Boogie Down Bronx. Whether it's the creation of hip hop, that was a Bronx creation, or a Colin Powell, a Sonia Sotomayor, a Ralph Lauren, a Kubrick. There's so many, Calvin. So I could go on and on and on. Black, Latino, Jewish, white from the Bronx. And another place where there's been an extraordinary number of brain pool is from of African Americans has been the state of Georgia. No doubt, no. I mean, so many extraordinary, incredible geniuses in so many fields. That's another area that I would do a sociological study. Which African tribes were sent to Georgia? Because from anything from science, technology, medicine, law, civil rights, art, culture, literature, it's just extraordinary how many geniuses, African American geniuses, have been born in the state of Georgia or who spent their formative years in the state of Georgia. From Martin Luther King to Malcolm X. So, I mean, I could go on. James Brown. So many, many, in a wide range of fields and disciplines. Part of that, I think, is because the whites in Georgia have historically given blacks, even though it's deep Dixie, more opportunities than most other whites in other states. And anything they let an African American in that they give us a fair shot at, we excel like no one else. Now that's true. And Georgia has been one of those states where African Americans have, even though it's southern and yada yada, the truth is the truth. And the proof of the pudding is demographics like the wealthiest blacks in America to this very day, and historically for the most part, have lived and born and made their money where? In the state of Georgia. Absolutely. To this very day, the zip codes with the wealthiest blacks in America, the state of Georgia is number one, and for the most part, even during slavery, free blacks, they were it. So, but that's a digression. Getting back. So, artificial intelligence, Stanley Kubrick, he was so profound. And it's the great tragedy is he died relatively young. Now, the movie is about obsolescence. But my take on Kubrick's film is he's talking about a lot of things, not just about obsolete machines, robots. What I think one of the things, and we had this, a group of nerds, the Barnard College Club, we had a discussion. I had a discussion with several members. Was Stanley Kubrick not just talking about machines becoming obsolete, but humans becoming obsolete too? Was he talking about genocide? Was he saying that, for example, humans are going to become obsolete and replaced increasingly by AI, artificially intelligent machines? It's sad but true. Now, that is controversial. It's a mistake. Let me backtrack and say, at this historic moment, they do not have computers with all these super duper high powered computing. They don't have computers that can outthink the smartest humans. I'm going to repeat that. At this historic moment, June 20th, 2015, June 20th, 2015, they do not have computers that can outthink the smartest humans. They don't. But they're getting there. But and when they get to that point, when they have artificial intelligence, machines that can, computers that can, we're in a lot of trouble. No doubt. But they don't. So, for example, and this. So this is Beverly. That was one of my hits from last year. My greatest hits from last year. I'm back. This is the Beverly Copeland Report. Hope to see you. Well, not hope. See you next time. Bye. Today is January the 4th, 2016.